Here is Immortal Moments for explanation. Friends, like videos and subscribes to our channel. Martial Universe Season 10 Part 72 Explanation. So let's start our explanation. After her mental energy was suddenly wrapped by Lin Dong's, Lin Kuo was startled. Her mental energy immediately wheezed in an attempt to escape. However, soon after, that mysterious mental energy suddenly emitted a warm ripple. Under that warm embrace, her mental energy felt as though it was a fetus being nursed in a mother's womb, as they gradually fell into a slumber. While they slept, her mental energy was quietly growing. Even before she realized it, her mental energy had broke through that obstacle that had troubled her for a long time, and she had advanced to the Divine Symbol Master level. That warmth unknowingly disappeared, before Lin Kuo suddenly opened her eyes. Initially, she was a little startled. After which, she quickly turned around and looked afar. There seemed to be a skinny figure gradually disappearing into the distance. Lin Dong. She gently bit her lips, appearing a little absent-minded as she looked at that man, who was departing in a free and easy manner. Promptly, the various incidents that occurred many years ago began to replay in her mind. After which, she smiled gently. However, there was a bitter expression within her smile. When Lin Dong returned to the courtyard where his room was located, he coincidentally saw Liu Yang coming out from a room. When he saw this, he quickly smiled and walked forward. Are they both resting? Liu Yang smiled and nodded. As she stared at Lin Dong, who was now a head taller than her, a pleased smile appeared on her face. After all, she still vividly remembered how that young man had worked hard in order to obtain an elixir for Lin Xiao many years ago. However, time flies. That weak young man many years ago had now become an existence that the entire Lin clan took pride in. Donga, Qingxu is a nice girl and mother likes her. Liu Yang tugged Lin Dong's arm before she smilingly said. Lin Dong involuntarily smiled in embarrassment when he heard this. However, why didn't you bring Ying Huan back as well? Liu Yang looked at Lin Dong and asked. I like that girl very much too. Moreover, I can tell that she really likes you. Lin Dong smiled bitterly. Currently, he was racking his brains over this matter. After all, he had feelings for both Ling Qingxu and Ying Huan, and he knew how much the both of them had sacrificed for him. However, both girls were extremely proud. One of them was the Palace Master of the Nine Heavens Supreme Purity Palace, while the other was the reincarnator of the Ice Master. As such, to be able to obtain any one of them was already a great blessing. However, he was now involved with the both of them, and he did not know whether this was a blessing or a curse. Liu Yang was someone with experience. Therefore, she immediately understood the situation when she saw Lin Dong's expression. Covering her mouth, she laughed. Donga is really popular. Lin Dong was embarrassed. He helplessly said, Mother, stop teasing me. When it comes to such matters, you will have to decide for yourself. However, I like the both of them very much. Liu Yang smilingly said. Lin Dong laughed dryly as he understood what his mother was implying. However, her current request was very difficult to fulfill. Liu Yang looked at Lin Dong. Then, she suddenly sighed and said, there is also Qingtan. What happened to Qingtan? Lin Dong was slightly startled. Liu Yang's lips moved. However, she eventually shook her head in distraught. Then, she extended her hand and pulled Lin Dong's ear. Finally, she snapped, nothing much. I will go back and rest first. You should also have an early rest. After she spoke, she opened her stride and walked away. At the same time, she involuntarily shook her head. Her son was simply too outstanding and it really gave her a headache. Moreover, that last Qingtan. Now that peace had returned again, Lin Dong's stay in the Lin clan lasted for a rather long period of time. The majority of the past 8 years had been spent out in the world. Now that such a rare chance had come for his family to be reunited, he naturally wanted to spend more time with them. He was aware that although the current situation seemed peaceful, countless undercurrents were flowing below the surface. The Yimo that had hidden themselves for hundreds and thousands of years were now gradually revealing themselves. No one could be certain of what they would do next. Lin Dong could faintly feel a slight sense of unease. This temporary peace was a precursor of the storm to come. It was exactly because of this faint unease that Lin Dong grew increasingly reluctant to leave the atmosphere created from spending time with his family. However, what baffled Lin Dong was that Ling Qingzhu never once mentioned returning to the Nine Heavens Supreme Purity Palace in advance. Yet, because of how much Liu Yang was fond of Ling Qingzhu such that they chatted every day, Lin Dong did not dare to speak of it. Since they seemed to like it, he would let them be. This peace lasted for several days, when Lin Dong was suddenly called out by Lin Xiao from his leisurely life. "You want me to go to the Great Desolate Province?" "What for?" In the courtyard, Lin Dong was a little stunned when he heard Lin Xiao's request and asked in a somewhat puzzled manner. "The current Great Desolate Province is very different from the past," Lin Xiao replied. "Different?" Lin Dong was taken aback. The Great Desolate Province was the first training ground he had gone to after leaving Qingyang town. Back then, it was rather chaotic and numerous factions gathered there from all over. Of course, it was also home to the Great Wasteland's ancient tablet and the ancient sect hidden within it where Lin Dong had obtained the devouring ancestral symbol. Since he was heading to the Great Desolate Province, he intended to enter the Great Wasteland's ancient tablet again. Everything had begun there, and it could be said that he owed that ancient sect a tremendous debt. He had taken many cursed nirvana pills from that place back then, which were in the end cleansed of their curse with the help of the Protector. Truth be told, there are two powerful factions in the current Great Yang Empire. Besides our Lin clan, the former four great clans have basically fallen from grace. Lin Xiao nodded and said, "Of these two great factions, one is our Lin clan, while the other is the Great Desolate Province's Eagle Sect." When the Great Yang Empire was surrounded and attacked by numerous empires, the northern border was basically defended by Eagle Sect. Eagle Sect? Lin Dong was somewhat surprised. Since when had such a faction appeared? This Eagle Sect used to be a mere martial dojo in the Great Desolate Province. However, 5 years ago, this Eagle Martial Dojo suddenly rose up and unified the Great Desolate Province in a short span of a year. Moreover, from what we know, their faction even has influence in several surrounding empires. Their power is extremely astonishing. Lin Xiao elaborated. Eagle Martial Dojo? This familiar name caused Lin Dong to blink. Subsequently, amazement appeared in his eyes. His life was truly peculiar. He never imagined that the tiny martial dojo that had needed his help back then would actually attain such astonishing achievements several years later. How did they suddenly become so powerful? Lin Dong curiously asked. He clearly recalled that the Eagle Martial Dojo of the past was a rather small and weak faction in the Great Desolate Province. How could they possess the power to unify the Great Desolate Province? It is said that they obtained the inheritance of a sect within the Great Wasteland's ancient tablet. The headquarters of the current Eagle Sect is located around the Great Wasteland's ancient tablet. It surrounds and protects the tablet. Lin Xiao laughed before continuing, the current master of Eagle Sect should be a woman called Jiang Shui. Jiang Shui. Lin Dong was a little dazed as distant memories rushed out from the depths of his mind. Within that dimly lighted room, a beautiful girl had slowly removed her dress, revealing that naked snow-white body before him. The strong girl had been willing to give herself to him in order to obtain protection for her martial dojo. He would never have imagined that the girl from back then would become the Eagle Sect master who had unified the Great Desolate Province. Such a change was truly amazing. Evidently, something must have happened after he left the Great Desolate Province. Asking me to go over should be related to Eagle Sect? Lin Dong inquired. Yes. Lin Xiao nodded as he frowned. You should know a little about the Great Wasteland's ancient tablet. It is rumored that a significant problem arose recently. Eagle Sect have been unable to resolve it and have sought help from our Lin clan. If you have time, you should make a trip there. A problem with the Great Wasteland's ancient tablet? Lin Dong also frowned. Soon after, he nodded his head without hesitation. He owed a debt to that ancient sect within the Great Wasteland's ancient tablet, and his devouring ancestral symbol had also been obtained there. In addition, the Great Desolate imprisoning heavenly finger he had obtained back then had helped him through countless life or death situations. Now that they had a problem, he would naturally do all he could to help. Swiftly go and return. Lin Xiao nodded his head. Lin Dong was no longer the youngster that he needed to teach from back then. With the latter's strength, let alone this great Yang Empire, there were not many who could stop him even in this fast world. Lin Dong smiled and did not tarry any further. He would be traveling alone this time. Although the great Yang Empire was extensive, with Lin Dong's speed, he had already reached the region where the Great Desolate Province was located in an hour. From the sky, Lin Dong lowered his head and looked down at the land as a look of tender recollection appeared in his eyes. Back then, he had walked out of Yang City and passed through numerous provinces before finally arriving at this Great Desolate Province. This place could be said to be where his training journey had begun. After checking his directions, he directly headed towards the central area of the Great Desolate Province. As he neared his destination, he was somewhat shocked to see an enormous flag fluttering in the wind within several cities. On the flag was a soaring eagle. The stern and divine look within the eagle's eyes made anyone who looked at it feel intimidated. Evidently, this was the flag of Eagle Sect. He just never expected that Eagle Sect would have such a solid control over the Great Desolate Province. It was likely that Eagle Sect was the true master of this Great Desolate Province, and even the royal family did not have any power here. While these thoughts passed through Lin Dong's mind, his body had already traveled several thousand miles. Subsequently, he started to pay a little attention as he raised his head only to see an enormous city towering on the ancient plains to his front. In the sky above the city, he could see countless figures flying past. Such a bustling scene did not lose out to the imperial city at all. Lin Dong peered into the distance only to see an incomparably huge stone tablet quietly standing at the center of the city. As he gazed at this familiar stone tablet, a complicated look flitted across his eyes. Great Desolate Imprisoning Heavenly Finger. Lin Dong softly chuckled. This martial art had been his strongest trump card back then, and had helped him through countless life and death struggles. Moreover, this martial art had been obtained from within the Great Wasteland's ancient tablet. Lin Dong's figure transformed into a shooting star as it streaked across the sky. Several breaths later, he had already appeared before the huge stone tablet. He gazed at the stone tablet with his hands behind his back as the look of recollection in his eyes intensified. However, this stone tablet seemed to have now become a sacred object of Eagle Sect, and ordinary people were basically prohibited from approaching. Hence, there was extremely tight security around it. The guards did not seem to have noticed Lin Dong's initially, but as he stood there while lost in thought, they finally regained their wits. Immediately, sharp alarm rang out as countless figures surged over from all around and tightly surrounded Lin Dong in a manner that even water would be unable to pass through. While Lin Dong appeared before the Great Wasteland's ancient tablet, a tall and slim woman in a light yellow dress stood on a certain tall building within the city. She possessed rather beautiful features, however she had the dignified look of one with high status. Currently, she was holding a cup of tea as she silently gazed into the distance and seemed to be somewhat lost in thought. Cough star. A soft cough was suddenly transmitted from behind her. The woman was taken aback as she tilted her head only to see a grizzled-haired middle-aged man standing behind her. She gently smiled and said, "Father." The middle-aged man walked forward. He gazed at the magnificent city before their eyes as he deeply sighed and replied, "Shui is really capable. In a short few years, you made our tiny martial dojo into the ruler of this great desolate province. I'm merely continuing the good work of my predecessor." The woman shook her head slightly and said. The middle-aged man felt a slight heartache as he looked at her. He bitterly laughed and said, "However, a lass like you is no longer young. When will you start worrying about your own matters? There are countless outstanding youngsters in the great Yang Empire who love and adore you. Are none of them able to enter your eyes?" This pretty woman was the Eagle Martial Dojo's Jiang Shui from back then, while this middle-aged man was her father, Jiang Lei. Jiang Shui gently sipped a mouthful of tea, before she faintly smiled and replied, "This matter is not urgent." "Not urgent, from what I can tell, your heart has likely long been given to someone, right?" Jiang Lei bitterly smiled and said. The jade-like hand holding the cup of tea gently trembled as Jiang Shui lifted her head and smiled a little. Father, what are you saying? Do you truly believe that father does not know what you did that night back then in Lin Dong's room? Jiang Lei sighed and said. Jiang Shui's jade-like face instantly turned crimson. Red-faced, she looked at Jiang Shui and seemed to have lost her previous wittiness for a time. Father, how do you know? Jiang Lei gazed at this rarely seen bashfulness of hers as the bitter smile on his face grew even more bitter. You should have heard of the news too, right? Lin Dong has appeared in the Imperial City. The current him is no longer the young man that needed us to lead him out of Mist Forest. Jiang Shui gently bit her lips. Soon after, she laughed softly and said, the fact that he has such accomplishments is not surprising at all. He is after all an eagle that soars in the 9 heavens. I'm afraid that he has long since forgotten me, but so what? It will be better if I am the only one that remembers. You silly girl. Jiang Lei was greatly moved yet made speechless by her words and could only helplessly shake his head. Woo! While the two were talking, an urgent alarm suddenly rang out in the sky above the city, causing the two's expressions to immediately change. Quickly, the sounds of wind could be heard. Sect Master, someone has infiltrated the restricted area and is now standing before the Great Wasteland's ancient tablet. Upon hearing this, Jiang Shui's pretty face immediately turned frosty. Her figure moved and flew towards the direction of the Great Wasteland's ancient tablet like lightning. At the same time, her icy shout echoed in the entire city. Eagle Sect disciples hear my command, seal the city and activate the formation. The sky and ground at the center of the city was filled with a sea of people. Stern gazes locked onto the thin figure before the Great Wasteland's ancient tablet one by one. When the command arrived, they would attack together and blast him into a bloody pulp. However, in response to their encirclement, the figure before the stone tablet remained motionless. He silently gazed at the ancient stone tablet with his hands behind his back. Swish! Sect Master! A wind sound was swiftly transmitted from the distance as a beautiful figure appeared within those countless gazes. Immediately, earth-shaking respectful shouts rang out. Jiang Shui's pretty face was ice-cold. She gently waved her jade-like hand as her eyes looked towards the thin figure before the stone tablet. Her long and shapely eyebrows furrowed as she spoke. May I know who this esteemed one is? Why have you broken into the restricted area of my Eagle Sect? Upon hearing her voice, the figure finally faintly trembled, before slowly turning around. As he looked towards Jiang Shui, a gentle smile surfaced on his face. It has been a long time, Miss Jiang Shui. I trust that you have been well since our last meeting. Jiang Shui's lovely body gradually stiffened at this moment as she gazed at the vaguely familiar outline of that young face. The surrounding Eagle Sect disciples watched in astonishment as their normally stern and respectfully cold Sect Master actually became dumbstruck at this moment. You are Lin Dong? Jiang Shui's lovely body was rigid as she gazed at the smiling young face in a dazed manner. The jade-like hands within her sleeves slowly clenched tightly as a faintly trembling voice was spit out from her red lips in a somewhat difficult manner. Lin Dong? Her voice was not loud, but it was still heard by some of the nearby Eagle Sect disciples. Quickly after, their bodies violently jerked as they stared the young man before them in shock. This was a name that every person in the current Great Yang Empire knew. Was the person before them the legendary Lin Dong who had annihilated the most powerful super sect in the Eastern Xian region? Lin Dong looked at Jiang Shui's expression as he softly chuckled and nodded his head. The gaze with which he looked at her was somewhat peculiar. Many years ago, Jiang Shui was merely a strong girl whose only wish was to protect Eagle Martial Dojo. However, he never imagined that she would become the sect master of Eagle Sect years later. Looks like he was not the only who had lucky encounters with fate. Jiang Shui finally gradually regained her wits. She looked deeply at Lin Dong as she gently waved her jade-like hand, dispersing the huge group of Eagle Sect troops in the sky. She lightly stepped forward, walking to Lin Dong's side and said, I never imagined that I will be able to see you again. Lin Dong looked at her. The complicated feelings in the latter's eyes caused him to have a somewhat indescribable feeling. However, he still smiled and replied, I too never imagined that after several years, your Eagle Martial Dojo would become the illustrious Eagle Sect of the Great Yang Empire. Truly an achievement. This small achievement is likely unable to enter your eyes, right? Jiang Shui said in a soft and bitter voice. Although the development of Eagle Sect was nothing to scoff at, it was still far from comparable to those super sects. Moreover, the strongest super sect in the Eastern Xian region had been annihilated by Lin Dong. What was a tiny Eagle Sect in the face of such power? Lin Dong could only dryly laugh twice in response to Jiang Shui's somewhat bitter tone, unable to come up with a response. Ha ha, Lin Dong, is it really you? Hearty laughter was suddenly heard from behind. A grizzled-haired middle-aged man had flown over. Extreme happiness filled his face as he looked at Lin Dong. Hey, Uncle Jiang Lei. Lin Dong gazed at the vaguely familiar face of the middle-aged man as a smile also appeared on his face. He respectfully cupped his fist together and greeted the latter. Jiang Lei joyfully stared at Lin Dong with eyes tinged with a little emotion. The latter was now a legendary figure in this Eastern Xian region, and those who wanted to create friendly relations with him were numerous and many. However, who would have imagined that this legendary figure had represented their Eagle Martial Dojo in battle many years before? Given your current status, I'm afraid that you've long forgotten people like us, right? When Jiang Shui saw how familiar Lin Dong was being with Jiang Lei that he did not give herself much attention, she gently bit her red lips and said in a somewhat resentful manner. Jiang Lei helplessly cast a glance at Jiang Shui. This lass had always been rigorous when she took charge the Eagle Sect's major affairs. Why had she now become so similar to her previous self from many years before? Miss Jiang Shui is teasing me. If you did not lead me out of the mist forest back then, I will perhaps have long become food for the wolves. Lin Dong forced a smile. He did not know where Jiang Shui's resentment originated from. Could it be because of that night back then? When he thought of this, his gaze suddenly swept across Jiang Shui's exquisite and fine figure as awkwardness involuntarily surfaced in his eyes. It was likely that any woman would become resentful from being rejected after voluntarily offering her body. Although it was a mere quick sweep of his eyes, the current Jiang Shui was after all not the girl from back then who needed to beg for his help. Her sharp gaze was instantly detected his. Immediately, her pretty face flushed red as she glared at Lin Dong in embarrassment. Asterisk cough asterisk. I've returned because my father received your request for aid. Hence, I'm here to see exactly what is wrong with the Great Wasteland's ancient tablet. Lin Dong withdrew his gaze. Soon after, he asked in a somewhat puzzled manner, other than that, is there some relation between you and the Great Wasteland's ancient tablet? Jiang Lei smiled as he nodded his head and replied, after you, Shui also entered the Great Wasteland's ancient tablet and was acknowledged by the tablet spirit, hence obtaining the inheritance of that ancient sect. In the end, we established Eagle Sect to protect the Great Wasteland's ancient tablet. Lin Dong could not help but be astonished as he looked at Jiang Shui. He had also come into contact with that Great Wasteland's ancient tablet spirit before, yet he had only obtained the Great Desolate imprisoning heavenly finger. As for the sect inheritance, it was beyond him. He never imagined that Jiang Shui was actually so awesome. Tell me about the Great Wasteland's ancient tablet's problem. Lin Dong pointed at the Great Wasteland's ancient tablet and said. Once they started talking about proper matters, Jiang Shui's umber black brows slightly furrowed. The domain within the current Great Wasteland's ancient tablet is somewhat different from the past. Do you know of the protector within the tablet? Lin Dong nodded his head. Back then, he had desperate fled from the protector. However, he owed the protector a debt due to the cursed Nirvana pills. You should know that the Great Desolate Sect was attacked by the Yimo in the far past, and a great earth-shattering battle had occurred here. In the end, the sect was destroyed, but the Yimo also suffered substantial losses, resulting in the existence of demonic qi deep within the land. Over the past few years, this demonic qi has gradually emerged. As expected, it is because of the demonic qi. Lin Dong gently sighed. He had sensed it when he arrived, but he did not expect that it would be his old foes. The current him was able to imagine that what had happened to the Great Wasteland's ancient tablet back then was likely due to the devouring ancestral symbol. The same thing that had happened to the Thunder Cave dwelling which had been attacked by the Yimo. The remnant wills of numerous Great Desolate Sect elders were left within the Great Wasteland's ancient tablet. Over the years, the protector gradually absorbed these wills, causing some changes to occur. These changes were initially positive, but as demonic chi gushed out from the land, the protector was gradually invaded by it. However, his tenacity and willpower is matchless. Thus, even after being corroded by this demonic chi, he refused to hurt anything within the great desolate sect and could only howl miserably every day. At this point, Jiang Shui softly sighed. Lin Dong's expression was somewhat dark. He rather admired this great desolate sect protector. Even after death and the fading of his Tao, he had continued to rely on the feelings of wanting to protect his sect, transforming into what he had become today in order to protect the sect forever. Such dedication had caused respect to be born in Lin Dong's heart. He never imagined that the demonic chi would cause such harm to the protector. We do not know why, but the demonic chi within the Great Wasteland's ancient tablet has grown increasingly over the past few years. It seems to be on the verge of charging out of the Great Wasteland's ancient tablet. Jiang Shui said. Lin Dong's eyes slightly hardened. If this demonic chi was to charge out of the Great Wasteland's ancient tablet, all life in this great desolate province would be wiped out. We have tried various methods but were unable to seal up this demonic chi in the end. Later on, something happened just as the demonic chi was about to burst forth. At this point, Jiang Shui and Jiang Lei's expression turned somewhat complicated. What happened? Lin Dong was rather puzzled as he probed. The demonic chi that charged out was neutralized by Yin, Jiang Shui mumbled. Yin? Lin Dong was taken aback. An extremely adorable little girl blinking her large eyes appeared in his mind. She was actually able to neutralize demonic chi? Yes, we do not really know how it works, but being able to deal with this problem is naturally a good thing. Subsequently, we arranged for Yin to stay in the Great Wasteland's ancient tablet. It might be strange for me to say this, but with her within the Great Wasteland's ancient tablet, the demonic chi was gradually neutralized. However, it very quickly gushed out again. In this way, they formed a deadlock of sorts which has lasted till now. Lin Dong's eyes were full of astonishment. He understood how difficult it was to deal with demonic chi. Yin was just a little girl who had not even cultivated. How could she possess a suppressive effect on demonic chi? Looks like there should be something causing mischief inside this Great Wasteland's ancient tablet. Lin Dong faintly smiled. He had encountered the Yimo far too many times, hence, he could tell with a single glance that there must be something hidden within this Great Wasteland's ancient tablet. Jiang Shui nodded her head. She had a faint feeling that this was the case, but was unable to be sure. Open the Great Wasteland's ancient tablet. We will know once we enter and take a look. Lin Dong waved his hand and said. With him around, Jiang Shui was clearly less worried. Without any hesitation, she gently waved her jade-like hand as a radiance erupted from the Great Wasteland's ancient tablet. It wrapped around the two of them and brought them into the tablet. When the light faded, the two of them had disappeared. When Lin Dong cracked open his eyes, the scene before them had already changed. It was still the same barren domain. Countless ruins could be seen, evidence that this was once a flourishing land. Lin Dong's gaze scanned the area and saw the traces of black aura that continuously emerged from under the ground. Immediately, his eyes faintly narrowed. Roar? While Lin Dong was observing the land, a miserable howl was suddenly heard in the distance. It was a howl filled with both pain and rage. It was that protector. Lin Dong's brows faintly furrowed. With a wave of his sleeve, he and Jiang Shui rushed towards the direction of the howl. In a short few minutes, they saw a lonely peak where a black figure was kneeling on one knee as it unceasingly howled at the sky. Thick demonic chi continuously emerged from within its body. Behind the black figure was a boulder where a little girl wearing a yellow dress was somewhat helplessly seated. Her little snow-white legs swayed as light emanated from her body, enveloping the black figure while continuously purifying the demonic chi from its body. Yin. Jiang Shui gazed at the little girl and immediately waved her hand. Elder sister. The little girl was pleasantly surprised as she lifted her head. Her large eyes saw the incoming Jiang Shui and her tiny body immediately leaped forward, directly pouncing towards Jiang Shui. The latter hastily caught her and smiled a little as her slender jade-like fingers pointed to the figure behind her. "Look who it is." The little girl followed the finger and saw a gently smiling Lin Dong. A pondering look flashed across those large eyes, before joy immediately surged onto that tiny face. "Big brother." Lin Dong heard the young and tender voice that was exactly the same as back then, before looking at the yin who had maintained the same appearance even after so many years. Although he was puzzled, he still smiled and nodded his head. While he nodded his head, the little girl had already happily run towards him. Her large jet-black eyes were filled with happiness. A gentle breeze blew past, blowing away the hair in front of her forehead, and Lin Dong saw an unusual and almost undetectable symbol. Immediately, his body violently jolted. "That is, a reincarnation seal?" This yin was also a reincarnator. Astonishment filled Lin Dong's eyes as he gazed at the reincarnation seal on Yinin's bright forehead in shock. Never in his wildest dreams would he have imagined that this little girl whom he had known many years ago would actually be a reincarnator. "What is it?" Jiang Shui had also noticed the look in Lin Dong's eyes and immediately asked. Lin Dong reached out and gently rubbed Yinin's little head as a pure and innocent smile appeared on the latter's little face. She clearly had a rather deep impression of Lin Dong and had still managed to recognize him even after so many years. "Has she been like this all these years?" Lin Dong asked. He had met Yin roughly 8 years ago. However, she already had the appearance of a 12-year-old little girl back then. Yet, after so many years had passed, this appearance of hers did not seem to have changed at all. Even the innocence in her eyes was exactly the same as it had been back then. Jiang Shui bitterly smiled as she nodded her head. She gazed at Jiang Yin and sighed. "I do not know what is going on, but she has indeed never changed over the years. Moreover, I can faintly sense something extraordinary from her." Lin Dong smiled at Yin before letting her head to the mountain peak first to wait for them. Only then did he reply, "Jiang Shui, she is a reincarnator." "Reincarnator? Doesn't that mean that Yin will be taken over by another set of memories in future?" Upon hearing this, the expression on Jiang Shui's pretty face changed a little. Evidently, she had heard of some rumors regarding the reincarnators. Lin Dong shook his head. "This will depend on who her previous reincarnation was. Logically speaking, if it was a reincarnation stage expert that had failed the first or second reincarnation tribulation and entered the cycle of reincarnation, it was likely that the current reincarnation will be dominant. However, if it was a terrifying existence like the Ice Master, the main personality in charge of the body in future would truly be hard to determine." "Do you know who her previous reincarnation is?" "Jiang Shui." Lin Dong shook his head again. Normally speaking, as long as one's Yuan spirit was not completely wiped out and had passed one reincarnation tribulation, one would be able to utilize the power of reincarnation to enter the cycle of reincarnation. Of course, even if one entered the cycle of reincarnation, there was still some risk of being destroyed. Hence, most pinnacle practitioners would not choose this path unless there was really no other option left. In ancient times, there were few pinnacle experts who had advanced to this level. Thus, even Lin Dong could not glean much information from just this reincarnation seal alone. However, if it was a reincarnation expert who had only passed 1 or 2 reincarnation tribulations, it would instead be a good thing for Yin. Lin Dong had now landed on the mountain peak. Subsequently, his gaze shifted towards the black figure wrapped in demonic qi. There was clearly a huge change in his appearance compared to back then. In the past, he only had a body of bones, but flesh had now grown on them. Although he was still thin, he had a human appearance. Moreover, what astonished Lin Dong the most was the countless remnant wills gathering within his eyes. However, no matter how messy and numerous those wills were, they all had one similarity: to protect. Over the years, the remnant wills drifting in this domain fused into his body. He has now become rather unique. No one knows exactly what he has become, Jiang Shui softly said. Lin Dong nodded his head slightly. Looks like the ability of the Great Desolate Sect to gather together was extremely strong. Even after thousands of years, the wills of these dead disciples still wanted to protect their sect. Raw? At this moment, the black figure seemed to be in extreme pain. His fists heavily smashed onto his chest as he kneeled on the ground. However, those blank eyes that watched this domain were filled with extreme fondness. "Hey, big guy, how are you doing?" When Yin saw the extreme pain the black figure was in, she hastily asked. Light continuously drifted out from within her body before enveloping the black figure, unceasingly purifying the demonic chi in his body. Lin Dong's brows tightly knitted together as he watched the suffering protector. Soon after, he clenched his fist and endless lightning bolts suddenly emerged from his hand. The lightning was filled with extremely berserk and pure energy. Swish! The lightning gathered together to form a lightning ball which directly charged into the protector's body. Quickly, sparks cackled out from his body as the demonic chi was completely annihilated. As the demonic chi receded, the pain and blankness in the protector's eyes gradually vanished. Some chaotic semblance of a consciousness once again gathered in his eyes. In the end, he deeply bowed to Lin Dong. Lin Dong waved his sleeve, stopping the protector. "Back then, I received your help in removing the curse from the Nirvana pills. This debt has now been repaid." Although the protector had some semblance of a conscience, it clearly did not amount to much. It was likely that he did not remember what he had done back then. After all, that he was now merely an accumulation of numerous wills. Unlike a human and yet not a corpse. Also a completely different state than the zombie old man Fen Tian. Lin Dong understood the protector's condition, hence, he did not elaborate any further. He merely turned his sinisterly cold gaze towards the land below, where strands of demonic chi were rising, as he icily chuckled. The richness of demonic chi in his body is not without origin. Relying on Yin to suppress it is not a long-term plan. To remove weeds, one must destroy the roots. If we want to solve this problem, we will have to deal with the thing hidden under this land. This was where he had obtained the devouring ancestral symbol, and it was also the reason for his achievements till this day. Therefore, it could be said that he owed a great debt of gratitude to this great desolate sect. Now that he knew that even their long-dead wills were unable to rest in peace, a trace of cold anger rose within his heart. "Protect Yin." Lin Dong said to Jiang Shui, and the latter nodded her head. She moved to Yinin's side and pulled her away. "I'm interested to see exactly what is causing mischief here." Lin Dong coldly snorted as the thunder clouds in the sky rapidly gathered. Countless bolts of lightning flickered and covered the entire domain. Rumble. Countless lightning bolts maniacally poured downwards, falling onto the land below. Berserk and pure energy spread as the originally present demonic chi was swept away by the lightning at an astonishing speed. However, even after clearing the demonic chi, there seemed to be no response from the land below. Truly tenacious. Lin Dong sneered as his finger thrust forward. 100,000 feet large lightning dragon bared its fangs as it shot downwards, viciously blasting the land below. Bang! The entire domain seemed to tremble at this moment, and an incomparably enormous and deep chasm was torn open on the land. The depths of the chasm was dark without equal, and it appeared as if a matchless evil was surging within it. Lin Dong's expression was ice cold. He once again thrust his finger forward as countless thunderbolts turned, seemingly covering the sky as they bombarded the land. Swish! This time, there was finally some response from the depths of the land. Lin Dong watched as evil demonic chi that seemingly covered the sky gushed out from the depths of the land like a devil dragon. As the demonic chi spread, it completely blocked the incomparably berserk lightning. Finally unable to endure? Then come out. When Lin Dong saw that there was finally a response from the Yimo hiding within the darkness, lightning surfaced in his pupils. He lifted his hand as the thunder clouds in the sky frantically surged, while countless thunderbolts gathered within them. The thunder clouds slowly scattered, but the moment they scattered, a 10,000 feet large lightning sun was revealed. Terrifying lightning rippled as thunder rumbled and echoed into the distance, causing the entire domain to tremble slightly. Go? Lin Dong's eyes were indifferent. His finger shifted downwards as the lightning sun immediately descended and galloped towards the depths of the abyss. Lightning flickered wherever it passed and seemed to scorch even space itself. Humph! As the lightning sun crazily fell, a gloomy and cold to the extreme voice emerged from the depths of the abyss. Soon after, endless demonic chi gushed out, transforming into 100,000 feet large demonic chi-like disk. Boom! The lightning sun slammed into the demonic chi-like disk, and two frightening to the extreme energies exploded. The already enormous abyss was once again forcibly torn open as giant gorges covered the land like a spider web. Resplendent lightning frantically flickered. Crack! Cracks finally appeared on the demonic chi-like disk, and with a final bang, it completely shattered. However, when the demonic chi-like disk exploded, a gigantic devil hand extended from the abyss and blew away the lightning sun with a punch. Bang bang! Although the lightning sun had been scattered, berserk lightning energy caused the devil hand to be covered in cuts and bruises. The Thunderbolt ancestral symbol's power was wild and violent at its core and possessed an offensive power that was without equal. Since this fellow dared to face such a power head-on, he would naturally suffer. You've actually obtained the Thunderbolt ancestral symbol. Such a head-on clash caused a gloomy and cold voice to emerge from the bottom of the abyss. Soon after, torrential demonic chi surged out of the abyss as a figure slowly walked out from within. Lin Dong watched the swirling demonic chi as the figure became clearer and clearer. In the end, it finally walked out from the black mists. It wore a strange expression on its pale and handsome face while a cold chuckle rang out. The previous devouring ancestral symbol controller died at this king's hands. I never imagined that the current devouring ancestral symbol and Thunderbolt ancestral symbol controller will also die at this king's hands today. Looks like this king is truly the nemesis of people like you. This episode ends here.